All right. Good morning, everyone. This is Allie Powell from the Women in Sales podcast, and I want to introduce you to our guest today, Monica Stewart from RedIQ. She's the director of sales there. So, Monica, nice to have you here on the show.
Good morning, Allie. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So, what we're going to do today with Monica, we're just going to kind of have a real conversation here about why she cares about being in sales, why Monica is in sales, how we can help other women, get into roles like hers. She is a VP of sales, which is really cool to have someone at that level kind of talking to us. So Monica, why don't you just tell us a little bit about your role and how you got there and what you're up to now?
Sure, absolutely. So I run the sales and customer service, so basically the client-facing organization at RedIQ. We are a real estate tech startup, specifically serving the institutional commercial market. It's actually a new role for me, and it's funny because when I was first speaking with them, my initial thought was, I don't want to do this. This probably isn't the right thing for me. You guys don't want me. I don't know anything about commercial real estate. I don't want to know anything about commercial real estate. You'll find someone else. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. And when I started to look at it more, I realized that actually, what the company was doing was super interesting. And as an organization, they needed the skills that I had. And it's certainly one of the best decisions that I've ever made. We're growing really fast. The team is growing really fast. People love the product. So it's an exciting place to be. And it's an interesting challenge for me because I think more than any other role that I've had, really allows me to do the thing that I've found that I'm best at in sales, which is help a company figure out what they have that's really valuable and then teach the entire organization how to sell it. And that's really fun, beyond just building out a sales process and hiring a team.
Cool. So one of the things you said there, I think is really interesting and will be interesting to the listeners here, is that you felt like, oh, this is not right for me, or so tell me about that. Like what happened? Because before this you were at Trello, right? And then before that, Panjuba. Mm-hmm. So maybe just talk a little bit about how you got to like this job, actually, because that's important to people, is like, how do you actually go from being, an account executive or working your way up in sales? So if you could talk a little bit about that process and like, the roles that you were in and the things that you learned over the years that led you to this director of sales role at RedIQ, that would be really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess starting out at the very beginning, I initially started working in sales because I thought that it was the most practical decision for me, frankly. When I was coming out of college, I wanted to do something that I was passionate about. I wanted to work in fashion or potentially nonprofits. I thought I wanted to do nonprofit fundraising. I wanted to have a job that would fulfill me on a personal level and on a creative level. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I know a lot of people that I know still, something that I still struggle with as well. So I started to look around and see what was available in the market. And I think I read somewhere that 90% or some crazy high percentage of maybe it was 80% people that work in fashion make less than $50,000 a year. Of course, this was a couple years ago, but I was like, whoa, that's not going to work. So I decided.
No, that's so true. I feel like a lot of my girlfriends after college, like they all, moved to New York and got fashion jobs, and I was always jealous of, wow, these girls are getting like free Chanel bags and having the like dream life.
But then cool parties and
yeah, I totally know what you're talking about. Okay.
Right, but then that Chanel bag might be like their version of their bonus for the year. You can't invest a Chanel bag, even though they call it an investment piece.
Totally, I love it. Okay.
Right. So I was like, well, that's not going to work. I wanted to be able to have enough money to enjoy the things that I love, not just, be around them. So
I love that.
Yeah. And I talked to a couple of people, and they kind of confirmed that this was probably a good idea. So I started looking around at sales jobs. And, also as a girl coming out of school, most of the recruiters that I was talking to were advising me to basically go be an executive assistant somewhere and then try to work my way up in that industry. Yeah. And I was like, no, I don't really want to do that.
So interesting. What year did you graduate? Just curious to.
I mean, not that long ago. I know this sounds like it's Mad Men or something. I graduated in 2005. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So I was 2006. Wait.
Maybe it's 2006. Yeah, something like that.
Something like that. So are you 33, 32?
I'm 32.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, so we're the same age. So we graduated around the same time, and I totally remember that too. Is thinking, why is everyone telling me to go be nothing wrong with being an executive assistant first off, but like, why was that the only choice that we had, or that were people that thought just like, oh, that's how you start your career? Well,
it's not.
It shouldn't. Yeah. So what happened from there? Like, how did you first get into a sales role?
So I interviewed at a company. I think I probably found the ad on Craigslist or something like that, because that was still something that you did in those days. And it was right. There were tons of job postings. And
I wonder if people still find jobs that way. Like,
I don't think.
Well, obviously, like I think there's certain jobs, but
certain jobs. Yeah. I don't know. I actually haven't looked in years. So so it was a company that produces institutional investment education conferences, and I got really lucky. I was working with a guy who had been with the company since the beginning, and he had started his own division within the company, which was producing alternative investment education events focused on large European institutional investors. So basically, our clients were massive sovereign wealth funds and pension funds, all in Europe, who had a significant exposure to any non-equity, non-debt asset class. And at that time, this was pre-financial crisis, so people were investing in all kinds of crazy stuff, distressed debt hedge funds, all kinds of securities.
That's crazy. I worked in private wealth management right after college too, so that's kind of where I started learning about. Yeah, learning about like what it means to be on a team that's selling something.
Right. And how did you find selling in that industry? What was the environment like?
Well, I worked on so it's interesting. I don't want to make this about me, but it was just interesting because I thought it was similar to your story. But I worked with like two other women, older than me, obviously, like probably in private wealth management, it seems like it's hard to, you have to be like a certain age to like work with people who have a certain money, it feels like.
Yeah.
But that's a whole other topic. So I assisted these two ladies who worked with high net worth people. So that's kind of what I did. So I didn't like sell direct, like obviously I wasn't a salesperson for them because I was like 22.
Right.
But I worked with them and I learned what it was like to, work with clients, work with CEOs, work with like anyone of any level. And that's what, led me to finally make a move into sales myself. And, and now I just I don't care about like who I'm talking to. And I think that's what led me to feel like this. Because I have no, like if you're famous, if you're a CEO, if you're, have $1, you have $10 million, like I don't really care. I care about, helping and trying to figure out like what I can help that person with and if we can do it.
Right.
And that's kind of like what introduced me to the world of sales. And one of the reasons I think I'm good at my job now is just because of that exposure at an early age to, all of these people that at, 22, 23, you would think, oh gosh, I'm scared to like talk to the CEO, or most, I think that a lot of women are scared at that point. Like you're very unsure of yourself.
Absolutely.
And so having these women that were a lot older than me, no offense if you guys are listening, but they showed me like a woman can do anything and be around all of these other men who are financial advisors, and and that's what exposed me to the fact that like I don't know, women in business can do anything, and if these ladies could do it and, be my supporter, then I could do it too.
That's so awesome. And I'm so glad you mentioned that, because you're right. It's such a formative experience, and I also feel really lucky to have had that kind of right out of the gate. So my job was to get all of these investors involved with our events, and then we would have hedge funds come and sponsor and stuff. So I worked from like 7 a.m. until 6 p.m. because I was working European hours. So from 7 a.m. until 1 p.m., I would make like 60 to 100 calls. And my boss sat about 4 feet away from me, and he was never on the phone. I don't know what he was doing. He was in Excel or something. So he was just sitting there, and it was terrifying, right? I had never done cold calls before. I didn't know, these people are like managing the public pension fund of Sweden, and they sit on top of a pile of trillions of euros. And the thing about Europe is that actually everybody is on their cell phone. Like they take a lot of vacations, but they're kind of always available. So people would answer me on their cell phone a lot. Like I got a lot of people on the phone. Once I got getting gatekeepers. Yeah. And they'd be like, oh no, it's fine. I'm just, on the beach in Malta with my family, but I have 5 minutes. What's up? So it was like,
that's really, wow. That's so different than the US. It's like when you call through, it's like, nope, they're not here. Goodbye.
Oh, totally. Yeah. It's like, I don't even know why we have phones. And then later on, I ended up actually selling to people who didn't have phones because I was selling to developers, but that's a whole other story. So I think, one of the things that stayed with me, and I'm so glad that you told that story, is so the 6 weeks into working there, my boss, Jared, was like, hey, you're doing a really good job. Basically, I think he had decided that, he was going to keep me. So he's like, okay, you're going to come to your first event. We're doing a conference in Portugal. It's in 2 weeks and you're going to go. And I was like, okay, wow, cool.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I was so excited. It was like my first international work trip and everything. So we go and
hold on. And something you said there is, I think, important to the women listening to this is like, you were like, wow, you're going to keep me. Well, that's an interesting feeling, like being a young woman out of college and in your first role. Like, did you feel like you had to prove yourself? Like, I mean, making those 60 to 100 dials right in front of him is super scary. I agree. Like at any age, I think that's nerve-wracking. Talk about that a little bit. Like,
well, I think that, with any entry level hire, you would, like, you're not really sure if they're going to work out. They might not. Like, they seem good, but they don't have work experience. And so there's always that probation period.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, certainly I felt as a woman more of a need to, I wanted to do a really good job, and I just wanted to like kill it. And actually it's something that I have seen throughout my career. I don't think that men feel as much. I think that they tend to, it's funny. I think that men tend to actually look out for each other more. And so if a guy messes up or has an off month or whatever, probably the people in management are also men, and they're like, hey buddy, like what, we'll work this out. We'll get through it. We'll help you get better. I do think that women are judged more just across the board.
Yeah. No, it's really interesting. There's so many things you're saying that I would definitely talk more about. So
yeah, totally. So I go to this event, and the night before it actually started, I was like, hey, can I talk to you? And I went and I met with my boss, and I brought like a little notebook. And I was like, okay, so what do you want me to do, throughout the next 3 days? Do you want me to help with, running the event? Do you want me to be sitting in all of the panel discussions, learning about what people are talking about? And he was like, oh, that's right. I'm so sorry. You've never done this before. I forgot. Okay, well, here's the thing. And he gave me the best piece of advice. He was like, just go around, talk to, whoever you want. And then at the end, you can make a list of the people that you think you made good connections with, and we'll go through it, and I'll let you know who you can take as clients of mine. And he said, just, one thing, that don't try, whatever you do, don't try to impress anyone, because you can't. You're 22. They're like in their 50s or 60s. They have multiple degrees. They've been doing this for decades. Just be yourself and
Be yourself. Yep.
Yeah. And
I love
thought
that.
I think about that all the time. And it's not, I know that it could sound disempowering, but I think it's a really important thing to remember. And it's helped me have that feeling, Allie, that you were talking about, where everyone that I talk to basically feels equivalent to me, because I'm not worried about impressing them. I don't care what they think about me. I'm just focused on them. And it's helped me so much in sales and in life. So that was
such a great point.
Experience.
I love that. And one of the things you said is like how he said, you've never done this before, you know, and I'm glad you went in and you asked, because a lot of women, you know, you might just go into that event just kind of like haphazard, not really knowing what to do. And, you know, you might have been scared to ask like for any advice from him, especially when you're working with a lot of men, especially early on in your career. I think your confidence level rises over the years. Like I think around, I don't know, it's just from experience, I don't know if you think this, but like around 25, you kind of like feel a little bit more comfortable in your skin.
Sure.
You know, by 30, you're like, you know, whatever. Like if someone doesn't like me, they don't like me. If someone doesn't think I'm good at my job, like it's like, I just don't care really. So I love how you said like, you know, one of the things I tell early level sales reps all the time is like, you know, when they say, how do you get so good at what you've done? And I just said, I honestly say this, I just being myself every single day. Like I don't try to be anyone else. I can't really be anyone else. I don't do a good job at it. So it's just interesting how you said, and just focusing on the client and how you can help them, because I truly believe sales is about helping people and making that connection. So I think that's great that, you know, you feel that way as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I think having a laser focus on that from the beginning, I couldn't have known it at the time, but it kind of set the stage for what I ended up doing. So a lot of what I did in that job was also kind of understanding what people in the investment world were talking about, and then coming up with content for them so that they would want to go to our conferences, because it was, you know, a pretty crowded space. And these guys get fund managers pitching them all the time. So to get them to take time out of their other work in their life, you know, even though it's fun and like, you know, you get to go to Monaco or whatever it is, they have really busy jobs, and to show value for them was really like the biggest challenge for us. And so I started getting really, really good at talking to people and asking questions and really listening to what they were saying and asking follow-up questions to try and draw information out. And that actually ended up being kind of my specialty as a salesperson. And it kind of helped to lead me to the thing that I'm doing now, which is sales, but also kind of like teaching companies what their clients really want. Because I always thought that this was something that was pretty self-evident, but it turns out that it's not necessarily, and people have all kinds of ideas about what it is that their own company actually does, which might be different from what their clients actually do.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true. So, okay, so let's see. So say someone's, you know, in sales as a woman, you know, or thinking about trying out sales, like, I guess, what would you say, like, your biggest piece of advice to them is, you know, from the things that you've learned? And I know we talked a lot about, you know, this one role, but your background, I mean, I can link to it within the post here, you guys, but, you know, she's done a lot of different roles at a lot of different really cool companies. So, you know, what would you tell someone that was thinking about joining sales, you know, coming out of college, or even someone who might be, you know, sitting here as an AE listening, thinking, should I apply for that manager role? Like, what should I do? Just a little advice for some women listening.
And that's a great question. Well, first of all, I would say, yes, do it. I think in every company that I've worked in, actually, there have always been, you know, you talk about your high performers and then your core reps and then your low performers. In every company that I've ever worked in, the high performers are always women. Most of the team is men.
Mm-hmm.
I've met very, very, very few low to mid performing women in sales.
Interesting. I never really thought about that. Okay.
Do you feel the same?
I think so. I'm like thinking about my team. Yeah, maybe. It seems
right.
Like, yeah, I kind of agree with you.
Yeah, like every team, there's like, you know, let's say there's 20, there's like 15 guys.
Okay, yeah.
Like, okay, there's like, you know, a couple guys that are super good, and then there's 2 or 3 girls that are super good. And I mean,
really
I think there's a couple of reasons to this. I think that women try. I think generally women in sales try harder because it's tough, right? And it sucks to be in sales and not be good at it. You're not making money. You're
definitely, whether or not you're a woman or a man.
Right. I think that men are a little bit more somehow immune to that. I'm not sure why.
I agree.
And then I think that I guess men don't take it personally if they fail. You know, they're just like, oh, you know, it's okay. Things happen. Like I'll do better next time. Right.
Yeah. Meanwhile, I like go home crying or something.
Totally. I'm like, oh my God, what's going to happen with my life? And I also think
I'm never going to sell a deal again. Like I'm never going to sell a deal again. I'm a failure.
Right. Everyone in the company is wondering why I'm here. This is just terrible. So men seem to give themselves a lot more leeway, and you know, maybe that's why. I've also noticed that one thing I've learned as a woman working in sales is that I really believe that women are uniquely positioned and uniquely qualified to get shit done. And that's what you're really doing here in sales, right? Like, you're not selling your product, like you're getting shit done. You're doing what you need to do to make this situation
just gave me chills. That's so true. I mean, you're here to do a job and to like, but if someone, you know, and you know what, also like to get shit done means maybe they're not a good fit, but let's move on and go get someone who is a good fit, you know?
Right.
That's really cool.
Or we need to have a hard conversation about where our product is and then decide if we want to make the investment now or not. Or I need to go about this person's head and start finding the people in the organization that won't block this project, or, you know, whatever it is. And when you look around, I think that we can all right now probably think of 5 examples of women that we know who get shit done, whether it's our mom or the person who runs the office, or a badass boss that we worked for. I just think that women are really, really good at that. And it's certainly something that helps you get ahead in sales, right? And I think once you start testing that ability in yourself and you see it work, it's kind of like a gateway drug, and you never go back. You're like, well, wait a minute, like I got that done. What else can I get done?
Oh, I love it. Yeah, because don't you feel like somehow sales, I don't do drugs, but like, you know, you get like addicted to that feeling. Like I mean, I personally get so happy when someone tells me like, yes, we want to use HubSpot and like we're choosing you over everyone else. Like that moment is the happiest moment for me. It's not anything else. It's like the paycheck is awesome and we should talk about pay and stuff, but like it's really the fact that like you've helped someone figure out that like, yes, your product and services were the best thing for their needs. And I think that that's really, you know, that's a hard thing to do. So it's so exciting once you finally get it.
Yeah, it is. It's so exciting. And it's one of the things that, you know, it's like kind of zooming out and looking at the position of women in the world, even in this country. There are so many things that you don't have a lot of choice over. And I think especially for young women, it can be hard to find your footing with that. There are so many things that we want to do and so many opportunities that we want to have. But so much of what we get told in society, especially when we're young, is that you have to wait. You have to wait to work your way up. You have to wait to prove yourself.
Okay.
You have to wait for the guy to text you back. You have to wait for all of these things.
Oh,
and to put yourself
so glad you brought this up.
Yeah, like where you can come into work every day and you get to decide what your destiny is and you get to decide what your wins are going to be that day is just awesome.
Well, I mean, we could end the podcast with a mic drop right there. I wish I had some sound effects, but seriously, I mean, I think any woman who is in sales would think the same thing, is that, and even when people describe to you, like, you know, when someone says, well, like, why are you in sales, or what is the point of being in sales? I mean, I was so sick of people telling me, like, when I worked in the, right after college, when I worked in private wealth management, it was like, oh, but you can't be that level until you're like at least 30. And I would be like,
right,
what is that?
wow.
I'm like, what are you talking about? Why? I've always been the person who's like, why do I have to do that? Why is it done that way? Why are you telling me to come in at 8 when I could come in at 9? Like, why? Like, I don't understand. Like, if something doesn't make sense to me, I've always questioned it. And that was like early on in my career when someone told me, you know, you actually can't do that job until you're like 30. I just was like, what?
But I
why?
can.
So that's, yeah. So I was like, screw this. I'm out of here. So that's when I started looking into startups and like found my way to HubSpot actually. But yeah, I'm just so glad you brought that up, is that there are roles where you can be younger. Age shouldn't matter. And I think that, you know, you work hard and you decide what you want to work on. You can find those companies. And I would say, I mean, I don't know if you feel this way, and I would like to hear your thoughts, but like tech is such a good place, tech, software, whatever you want to call it, like it's such a good place for women who want to work their way up on their own merits. I just thought any corporate company or any like big company I ever worked for, you know, really I just was always told, like, that's the way you do it. This is how you do it. So, and I just really don't like that. And I found that, yeah, and it's like, why? Like, if you're doing the right things and you could be that role at that moment, like, no one should tell you that you can't do it because of your age. No one should tell you can't do it because you haven't had enough experience. Like, if you can get the job, you can get the job.
Right. And if you can get the sale and you can get those numbers, that's what you're doing. I agree with you. I think tech has been amazing for that. And I know that there are other issues with women in the tech industry overall, which I think are really serious.
Right.
And I think we're probably only now just starting to address, and it's good. One thing that I do think is nice about being a woman in sales in tech, though, is that usually most of the other people at your company don't know anything about sales, and they're very aware of that. So it's not like in other industries where someone is involved in sales conversations just because they're a managing director, and they don't necessarily know anything about it. People will kind of defer to you because they know that their specialty is product or they're engineers, and they don't do sales. They don't want to do sales. They want to leave it to you. And it's a very
I get what you mean. Like when you're early on and it's all the engineers that like built the company or something, right?
Right. Yeah. They'll usually listen to you because they know that it's an expertise that they don't have. And especially in smaller tech companies, being able to have metrics behind what you do, I've found has been super valuable. Like, if you're successful, it's undeniable. You're bringing in clients, you're bringing in money, you're achieving your goals. It's hard to
That's a really good point.
Not get people to agree with you if you're doing well.
And especially because tech people and engineers in general, I mean, their whole philosophy on life and the way they think is very data and analytics. So like, if you know, it's kind of hard to say like, actually I am doing well because you can see my numbers right here. So it's a very good point. It's not like with other, maybe like a big corporation where you have to go from, you know, this position to that position to that position to get to some position. You know, you don't really have that in a small startup. You just kind of prove yourself and kind of build those positions as you go.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. So in that sense, I think it's a great thing for women to get into, even if it's something that you're intimidated by initially. Like, the products are not that hard to learn. I would recommend for anybody to get into it.
I love it. So well, unfortunately, I wish I could talk to you for probably days and days, but so as we like kind of come up on the half hour here, what I guess, is there anything else you want to talk to the women listening to this about? I mean, I could obviously ask you a lot of questions, but this is your time to shine, your story as like why you work in sales and how you got to where you are, and any message you want women working in sales or women who might, want to work in sales in the future. What would you say to them, or what thoughts do you have on anything? We'd love to hear them.
I guess I would say for women that are thinking about getting into sales, or who are just getting into it now and looking at their career path, I would say, look at the bigger picture. It's not always an easy job. You have bad days, clients are rude to you. Sometimes you don't get the deal that you wanted. One of the things that I didn't really understand until a couple years into my career is that being in sales actually was the best way for me to develop my skills as a leader, which can take me into any job. So, people say that working in sales is a good way to get into leadership and upper management. A lot of sales leaders end up becoming CEOs. And usually that's because, you're bringing in so much revenue, and so you're important to the company. I think it's a really good path for women because, as we just discussed, it's pretty clear and it's pretty easy to prove your power if you're successful, but also along
your value,
the way,
yeah,
and your value, yeah, totally. It's like you can't, nobody can take that away from you. And I think along the way, the things that made me really good at sales and helped me to get where I am, which are listening, being able to understand what people's real motivations are, not just what they're telling me, understanding how a company works that I'm trying to sell to, understanding how decisions get made, where it's dysfunctional, what their needs are, what their priorities are actually the things that have enabled me to be a really strong leader today and provide value to my companies in other ways. So now I find myself using these skills as much internally as externally.
That's wonderful. And I think that's a great message for women here, is that, sales, I think, is a role that as you kind of grow with it, you'll become a better leader. And if you have maybe one day you want to be a director of sales, a VP of sales, maybe you want to be a CEO one day, or you want to start your own company, like all of the things that happen from sales, like, don't you feel like you learn these skills that will make you that asset someday to another company? And I think that's a great point, and I'm so happy you brought that up.
Yeah, 100%. It's, at the end of the day, it's, and I also feel like I could just talk to you forever, and not to get too much into another conversation, but when we look at where sales is going, a lot of organizations are really focused on these like hyper growth, scalable, really metrics focused structures. But if you look at what is really, like, if you look at what's really driving value, and also which part of our sales jobs will not be eventually replaced by technology, it's really being able to connect on a human level, right? So to the extent that you can develop that, it'll be able to take you wherever you want to go.
That's so true. And geez, I feel like that's a podcast in itself, is like technology taking over our jobs.
Yeah.
And it is something funny that you kind of have to say. I don't think sales is ever going to go away, but yeah, that's really interesting. So, okay. So one of the things, like, just to end this, I think would be cool, is to hear, like, when you hear that you're a director of sales, like, did that take, like, when you were applying for this startup role, like, was that what the title was, or did you ask for it, or like, how did you get to go from like at past companies to becoming a director of sales? I think a lot of women probably listening to this are account executives themselves, or maybe, a manager, and they're looking that next step that might be with a smaller scale or smaller stage like company, and they want to go after that VP of sales role or that first sales hire that would, eventually become a director of sales or a VP of sales. Talk to me about how you knew you should go, like leave your job and go do that, take that risk on and take that role.
Great question. So I'd kind of been doing a hybrid role for a while, starting at the company that I was at before Trello. Our business model changed quite a bit while I was there, and I helped to kind of drive that and drive development of our enterprise products. So I had already built out an organization within a company that I was at where we were selling a new product, we had new pricing structure, new clients that we were going after. So we were finding product market fit and all of that. So I'd already done that. It was the same thing when I went to Trello. They were just starting to kind of figure out where how their enterprise business was going to look and what clients made the most sense for that and what the real value proposition was. But when I was interviewing at RedIQ initially, it is an important point that you bring up, because one of the things that we talked about early on was first they wanted a director of sales. Then they were thinking, well, maybe we want someone to come in and be more of like an early sales hire that will then eventually become the director. They already had a small sales team, but they felt like they wanted something more. And I was so it could have gone in that direction. And I was really, really clear with them that the value of bringing me in and having somebody at my level, like, sure, I can sell your product all day, but you can find a lot of people to do that. You're going to get more out of me if you incentivize me to teach everybody else how to do what I can do and then hire more people to do that. It's a better use of my time. And it's a better application of me as a resource. And it took a little bit of convincing because, their investors were like, whoa, you're going to hire this senior level person. I think there's a lot of resistance to hiring people who just want to be in sales management and won't actually bring in revenue, especially for a small company. And I totally get that. But
did you sell at all when you got in there? Well, probably, but yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I did. And I still do a little bit because, I also want to, because I think it's really important to hear from customers firsthand how they react to the product, what their business is. So that's something.
So you're probably helping your reps, right?
Yes. Yeah, I also help them a lot with their deals and with their negotiations. So it was really important for me going into this that I didn't get stuck basically doing two jobs and only getting paid for one and not being able to do them both effectively.
That is a wonderful way for us to end this. I am so happy that you said that. So like knowing your worth when you're there and not letting go of that and just, say, this is what I bring to the table and this is why this should be important to you, and really going after that. I think it's an amazing point, and I think you can only get to that point with experience probably too.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not something that I would have felt as comfortable doing when I was younger, but at a certain point, at the beginning of this conversation, we talked about wanting to prove yourself. And I think it's also important at a certain point to be able to step back and realize that you don't need to work so hard to prove yourself anymore. You are that person and your experience and people need to recognize that.
Yeah, exactly. You need to recognize what you're worth. So I really appreciate your time. So for the ladies listening to this, or men, once again, where can they find you? Like if they want to follow you or, whatever it might be, or connect with you on some of these topics, if they have questions, would that be okay to post obviously where they can reach you maybe?
Yeah, absolutely. If anybody is a member of the Modern Sales Pros group, I'm on that. You can reach me there. You can also find me on LinkedIn. Happy to connect with any of you guys.
Perfect. Thank you so much for your time. And I know we're here in the second quarter, so I wish everyone, the best Q2 and best half year that they they can have. And I hope everyone has
Yes.
if you sell, monthly too, I hope everyone has the best month they can. And, I really appreciate you doing this towards the end of the month. I know it's hard. It's never a good time to do these types of things. So it's so helpful because we need more women talking about their roles and why they're in them to get more women feeling more comfortable with all of this. So I'm just very thankful for your time, and I hope everyone enjoys the podcast. And I
Thank you,
appreciate your
Ashley.
time.
It's been really great.
Yeah, so happy selling, and everyone go get that money.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.